Welcome to the Mile High Insiders podcast. And as you can see, Luke is not here today. He is taking the night off for his birthday. So we have Lance Sanderson from Dove Valley Deep Divers coming in to take his place. So thank you for that, Lance, for joining. We appreciate it. Better than me trying to do it by myself. So how are things going?
Doing good, man. It's been a long time since we got an opportunity to chat together. We did some draft coverage, I believe, last year, and then obviously we got a chance to meet up live at the Mile High Huddle meet and greet a couple of years ago at the Jets game. So I'm excited to talk to you, man. I haven't got a chance to really chop it up with you in quite a while, and I'm always curious to get some other people's takes and just kind of switch up the conversation. Don't get me wrong, Eric's my brother. He's my dude. I love the guy to death, but you know what? He grinds on me a little bit and he gets after me a little bit too often. So nice to be able to open up and just change up the discussion a little bit, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm coming, obviously, you can tell that my background is different. I'm coming from Patriots country of all place in enemy territory. I'm out in New England. So I'm coming at you from a little later, but we got some big news to talk about, and we got a lot of different perspectives, coming from Mile High. So it's Mile High Huddle. So it's nice to have you here, different perspective than Luke, and we'll see how it goes. But I'm pretty excited, man. It's like you said, we haven't really had a chance to jump on a podcast together. So we got some news, not big news, but we do have a little bit of news. We've got kicker news. So for all you kicker fans out there, this is going to be your show because we're going to jump in and talk about, obviously, Brandon McManus was cut and re-signed. He was signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Broncos have got themselves a new kicker. But before we jump into that, let's see who we got joining the chat today to welcome Lance into the show. Michael Ronquillo is always here. Appreciate it. He's coming in as always. Faithful observer of Mile High Huddle in general. So, Michael, thank you for being here. He's saying, good evening, Thomas Hall and Lance on Mile High Insiders. Go Broncos and buck 'em. Thank you for being here, Michael. We really appreciate it. And again, we can never put into words how much we, really appreciate your support. So thank you very much. And David McGilrath's coming in with a super. Appreciate that very much, David. Saying, good evening, Broncos country. Luke, Tom, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Buck 'em ×3. All right. Mile High Huddle for life. Denver Broncos for life.
What's up,
Thanks for being here, David. Really appreciate it. And, of course, we really appreciate the support as well. And don't forget to tune in to Dove Valley Deep Divers on Friday. Lance is co-hosts that show with Eric. It's another nice show on Friday night if you want to catch that. And, of course, subscribe to the show and, like the show and tell your friends and family about it, right? Get some more people jumping in here to talk football on the live stream. So, all right, Lance, tell me what your initial take was of at least cutting Brandon McManus, right? That's what's the impetus for this new change.
Yeah. I don't like the move, honestly. Like, I understand it. I was talking with Carl about it a little bit last night on building the Broncos. And to me, this is Sean Payton literally making everything his own creation, as Chad likes to say on his new album, the Bridge the Gap album. But he's coming. He's got his fingerprints on literally everything. George Payton is no longer in power. Every move that you've seen has been a Sean Payton kind of a deal, and it's really been to overhaul this special teams move. And the Broncos moving on from Brandon McManus is the final piece to that puzzle. I firmly believe that. And to me, it didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense other than with Sean Payton coming in and resetting the culture from the top down. That is the big grinding factor for me, because Brandon McManus, while he struggled last season, he missed 3 times from inside 40, which is more than he had the previous 3 seasons combined. Right. Obviously, he struggled last season, missed an extra point, I believe, as well, had a couple of kicks blocked, and just really struggled overall. But he wasn't necessarily that expensive for a kicker. He was expensive, but in terms of what his salary cap hit was against the Broncos, I believe they saved like $2.6 million or something like that against the salary cap. But to me, it's the culture. He's the Broncos player rep for the NFLPA, and he is a very big proponent of enforcing what the NFLPA says with OTAs. Don't come, guys. This is a voluntary thing. You don't have to be here. I'm not going to be there. And I think that was really the big thing. The Broncos would never say it out loud, but I do think that was the big driving force behind the move.
Yeah. Sorry, man, I got to sneeze there. Sorry about that. Yeah, for me, it was a bittersweet, really, because he's the last remaining member of Super Bowl 50, which we all hold dear to our hearts. But, it's been a lot of years of losing seasons, right? So, like you said, new culture change, getting rid of some of that old blood, bringing in somebody new. And the new person has very little experience. And I kind of thought it was a strange move to cut Brandon McManus without anything else in place as a plan, right? It was just, I feel like it was a financial move. They cut him, maybe a culture change move. Like I said, it's bittersweet, but they had no options. So now they brought in some options and they decided to go with Elliott Fry, who is very inexperienced. I mean, he's been with a lot of teams, don't get me wrong, but as an NFL kicker goes, he's only kicked 6 field goals. So that's a lot riding on somebody when you had someone like McManus who was key to that Super Bowl run in 2015. I mean, if it hadn't been for him, they probably would have never got there. So you had a reliable kicker that got you over the hump, and now you're going with somebody that's an unknown. And that's a little bit disconcerting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And Scott, behind the scenes before we went live, was talking. He was with the Atlanta Falcons there for a year or a couple of years, something like that. And Scott said that the Falcons literally cut and re-signed him for like 6 weeks in a row. They did it so often that they stopped reporting on it just because it was like a financial decision or something like that, moving money around. But they would cut him on Friday, get after the game, re-sign him on Monday, keep him on the practice squad, stash him away, cut him on Friday, and just repeat that process, Yeah. And like the most experience he has as a team's leading kicker. This is from Andrew Mason at denversports.com. He said that he was the primary kicker for the Orlando Apollos back in the AAF back in 2019, went 14 of 14 for the Apollos, but every kick was inside of 50 yards. In fact, his career long as a professional is 44 yards. So this is a very strange move to me to go. And I want to grab this comment from Tom Lockhoff. He comes in with a $5 super chat. So thank you, Tom, for that. He says, "Good day, guys. It would have only made sense if it was before free agency started, so we could have a better replacement. It makes 0 sense now to move on from Brandon McManus." And I 100% agree with this. If nothing else, you keep McManus in the fold and you bring in a guy like Fry, or they had Patrick White, I believe is what his name was, the other kicker they brought in, and then Brett Maher, who was formerly with the Dallas Cowboys. Bring those guys in as a competition, let them kick it out, and if it's even anywhere close, then you make that move and you move on to save that little bit of money on the back end going into the season. Making this move post June 1st and like I don't want to say a big deal out of it, but like kind of making a statement. We're in the middle of OTAs and we're going to move on from our veteran experienced kicker, a leader on this team, and a guy that was the last, like you said, the last remaining member of the Super Bowl 50 team. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's a cost-cutting move or some other reason, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense. And if you think about it, Fry, this will be his 12th team, I believe, that he's been on. And if you go back to his college days and you look at what he did in college, he wasn't that great of a kicker. His final season, his senior season, was like 75% accuracy, which doesn't really cut it. If you look at that compared to 2023, the kickers in the NCAA, some of them were drafted in this last draft, he'd be 75th out of all of those kickers. 75th. That's not very good accuracy. And he went 5 of 6 in the NFL. It's just, there's so little to grab onto to say this Brandon McManus move was worth it. And we had Cecil Lammey on here last week, and he talked about it. And he said, cutting McManus and bringing somebody in, depending on who you bring in, could make the difference between a 9 or 10 win team or a 7-8 win team. And that's what we're going to be watching as Broncos fans, going, all collectively holding our breaths, hoping that this inexperienced guy is going to win a game for the Broncos. And I was okay with Brandon McManus moving on. It wasn't that I didn't think that I thought he was playing too poorly for his salary, right? So moving on from him makes a little bit of sense. The timing of it makes no sense. And having nothing in behind him to take his place. They had to bring in brand new kickers. It makes no sense to me. So that's where I'm at. I hope it doesn't come back to bite the Broncos. Like, they could be sitting there on the cusp of a playoff berth for the first time in several years, and the kicker misses the field goal and they go home for the season.
Yeah. Phil McLaughlin jumping in here on Facebook. What's up, Phil? It's always a pleasure to have you in the chat. You are one of the best supporters here at the Mile High Huddle community, man. So thank you once again for joining us tonight. He says, good evening, Lance, Thomas, and Deacon Scott. I hope I'm wrong, but I doubt Fry is kicking by the end of the season. Got to be a better kicker out there. Hashtag Buckham with a B, YouTube. Easy killer. And hashtag MHH for life. I agree with you on this one, Phil. I don't know with Fry and the inexperience here. And like you said, Tom, I do think that this is it very well could be the difference between, a team that has 10 or 11 wins. I think the Broncos have enough talent on this roster to get there, so long as Russell Wilson plays well and Sean Payton, by all stretch of everything we've been reported on, has made it, we're going to get back to the right way of playing football. So now imagine you need to go out there, week 7 or 8, maybe somewhere, middle of the season sometime, and you need a game-winning kick, a 47-yard field goal game winner. And we've got an inexperienced kicker out there that has 6 career field goals to his name, 7 career extra points to his name. He's missed 2 of those as well. And you're relying on this guy to go out there and win you the football game. That to me is just super nerve-wracking. We've at least seen Brandon McManus be able to make that kick. We've seen Brett Maher be able to make that kick before. And I'm not pounding the table for Maher to be the guy, but I do think that they need to get him brought into the fold and maybe bring him in for a competition and really start this competition up in training camp and not just rely on a guy that we don't know anything about. Tom, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Sorry about that. I must have hit the button on accident. Yeah, George Fox coming in saying something very similar, right? I feel this was a big mistake. I'm not happy about it. Denver Broncos for life, Mile High Huddle for life. Thanks, guys, for all the information on the team. My feeling with it is, just like George here saying, it was a mistake, because if they were planning on doing this, why did they draft a safety that they aren't going to end up needing if they're going to re-sign Kareem Jackson? I mean, these were plans in their mind, right? Why not take a chance on a kicker in college, a good kicker, someone that had proven themselves in college? Take a swing on one with a 6th-round pick. You don't need that extra safety who may not even make the team now that Kareem Jackson is re-signed. It boggles my mind to think that they had no plan and it was almost kind of a last-minute afterthought. That's what bothers me the most. They seem like they've been very strategic in a lot of their moves this offseason. They went out, they spent the money to shore up the offensive line. They've gone out and they've signed the players to fill in spots. And this is just almost like they just felt like doing it kind of thing. And I know that is it's NFL. I'm sure they plan it out, but it seems very unplanned. I would assume just, follow your plan. If you're going to clean the culture out, you're going to get rid of, those past players that have been used to losing. Why not do it right away, or at least draft somebody and put a competition out there? Like you said, have a competition. Don't just cut them and then go, well, we got to bring somebody in. And that's what they did. They brought somebody in, that just anybody really, because this guy's an unknown.
Yeah. Gary Palmer jumping in here with a $10 super chat. And he says, evening, Lance, Thomas, and Scott. I don't know what's happening, and that may be the point. I hope. Go Broncos and Buckham with a B. Yeah, Gary, I'm with you on that. And that very well could be the point here, is that we're not going to leak all this information out. Over the last couple of seasons, especially last season with Nathaniel Hackett in the fold, the Broncos were very public with pretty much everything they did. I mean, they showed video of inside the draft room. They did that the year before with Vic Fangio with the Behind the Broncos series. We haven't seen any of that. Sean Payton came in his opening press conference and he's like, I want anonymous donors. I want people to just shut the hell up and go to work. Like, we're not doing this whole social media thing. And we talked about that last night as well with Russell Wilson. And then unfortunately for us, he actually released some photos of him and his wife over the weekend, which I don't mind any of that. Don't. I'm not going to get into the hot takery of that. That's stupid. It's dumb. Whatever. But it's very true though. everything about the Broncos this offseason. I mean, even going back to your guy, JL Skinner, who I disagree with you a little bit. I think that JL Skinner is a very good player. He's a very good special teams player. So that was the move there. I think De'Aaron Turner-Yella is the guy that needs to be on the lookout here, because JL Skinner was a 3rd-round pick in my estimation, and that pectoral injury that he suffered in the pre-draft workout really dropped his draft status. Taking a player that has an injury, you're obviously going to take him a little bit later. He's a better player than De'Aaron Turner-Yella is. There's no question in my mind. So that's where the move's going to be on that one. Regardless, I think that with this whole, I don't know what's happening and nobody else does, that really is the point. Because Brandon McManus is a very big and boisterous personality. He's a guy that gets out there on the main lines. He loves to go out there at training camp, dressed up as referees and blowing whistles and throwing flags, and he's out there having fun. He's, again, a very big personality off the field. And you're a kicker, dude. Shut up and go to work. Like, we don't need to hear from our kicker every other week and doing interviews and stuff like that. So I think the big thing, again, and I'm going to say it again, with Sean Payton recreating the culture, wanting those anonymous donors, that's where this move comes from. And again, we just don't know what's happening. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. That's for sure. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out in August.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. You know, I like Skinner too coming out of the draft. I thought he fell, but it's not just De'Aaron Turner-Yell. I mean, if they're going to keep 4, you got to get rid of PJ Locke, or you got to get rid of Caden Stearns at this point, right? Unless they decide that the dead money, that they have very little dead money and they're just like Kareem Jackson's not going to make the team, then fine. But for me, all these moves have made sense though, right? Even though it's been quiet, even though people haven't been leaking stuff to the media, every time they've done something, I was like, that kind of makes sense. I get it. And to make this make sense, we've got to kind of dig deep to figure out, oh, well, maybe it's because he's, a big personality and they don't want that in the team, or maybe because there's a cost-cutting move, but we don't really know why. So to me, that kind of boggles my mind, because other stuff made sense. When they went out and spent all the money on the offensive line, I didn't necessarily care for that much money going out as a fan looking on saying, what about the salary cap? But it made sense. They've got to fix that offensive line. When they brought in the running back there, P-Ryan, that made sense because Javonte Williams is, hobbled. That definitely made sense. A lot of these moves did. Even Kareem Jackson to me makes a little bit of sense because of his leadership. And everybody has talked about his leadership. That makes sense. Even though you're probably pushing a young guy off the roster that you drafted recently, it still makes sense. To me, having no backup plan doesn't make sense. And that's why I think a lot of the fans are kind of scratching their heads saying, what was this for? Why did they do this in this way, kind of thing? Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from. I like that they're quiet, but it still doesn't make sense. Got Phil McLaughlin coming in here. Thank you so much, Phil. Of course, you're one of our favorites here on Mile High Insiders, saying, I have looked at the stats for kickers in the XFL and USFL. There are some with much better percentages. Seems like a logical place to look. Well, that makes a great point, Phil. I have not looked at the XFL or USFL for kickers.
Likewise.
Obviously, this kicker that came in was, in a developmental league, the AAFC or whatever it was called, American Football Alliance of American Football, or whatever it was. I can't even remember. It's been so long ago, right? It was like 2019. Yeah. Been forever ago. He was accurate there, but the NFL is it's just a whole different thing, man. This is the best of the best. If you're not out there, doing a good job kicking, you're gonna lose your job right away. And the lights are bigger, brighter. It's I don't know, but you're right. I just feel like even the ones that the kickers they brought in, they've had their struggles. But they've had more experience. So maybe they see something that we don't. Maybe he came in and just nailed every kick and they're just blown away. But I don't know. And here we are talking about kickers. It's crazy.
I was going to say we've spent damn near 20 minutes talking about kickers and what this is. Like it's crazy. It's the slow time, guys. But there's news, there's also other moves that were made. The Broncos did bring in a tight end, Thomas Hudson, I believe is his name. Released Jock Patrick, who was a former XFL running back, to make move for him. They also moved, I believe, another running back as well. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think is
Yep.
the one that they released to bring in Elliott Fry. So like the Broncos have made some moves. They're kind of turning the lower end of this roster, and that's always smart. And especially in the offseason, you have the ability to bring in 90 guys and just get the best competition you possibly can. The guys underneath the top 51 cap hits don't count against your salary cap. So it's always smart to just keep this roster churning over, especially on the bottom side, because you never know what you might find. And Harold Jean says we didn't release Jaleel. It was the other
Yeah, it was
McAllister, right? Tyreek McAllister.
yeah.
Sorry about Yep, that's right. Sorry about that. I do apologize. A little house cleaning there. But the one thing that I want to kind of chop up with you a little bit here, and going back to Kareem Jackson, and like you said, the leadership and just the ability of him to trigger down in the running game. He's a very aggressive tackler, something that really made sense with me going back to, all these moves making sense, is with Kareem Jackson. He played 4 consecutive seasons with the Denver Broncos and was a free agent. So he actually got an exemption on his contract. It's a 4-year qualifying offer. The Broncos actually saved, I believe, $1.8 million in cap space by bringing him back. So that's just a smart move in general. You bring a guy that the players all like. He's a quality player, at least in short area quickness and stuff like that. He's not a guy that you want to have, roaming the single high center fielder as a free safety in a cover 3 scheme, but you at least have a guy that you can come in and rely on. You don't know what Caden Stearns is looking like coming back from that hip injury. You don't know what JL Skinner is going to look like. PJ Locke, while he was effective last season late down the stretch, he's still a very big question mark. So bringing a guy back in that has experience, has that leadership, can play still at a fairly decently high level was a very good move in my opinion.
Yeah, financially speaking, absolutely. But pass defense speaking, I kind of scratched my head because he was exposed in pass defense. There's no question last season. I do like his ability to hit. I like his leadership ability. But what I don't like is they've invested, and they weren't high draft picks, but they were mid-round draft picks in young safeties that they should develop. If you want to get younger, you want to have a nucleus of your team growing together. You can't afford to bring in an aging vet to knock one of those guys off the roster. It could be JL Skinner, like you said, Delaire Turner-Yell. It could be even, Caden Stearns or PJ Locke, who, they're not superstars, but they're a young nucleus of the team. In 2 or 3 years, they're going to be that reliable piece. And just to bring back, a leader that doesn't have much left in the tank. That's what kind of bothered me about Kareem Jackson. The money doesn't bother me, and the leadership is great. But he's also been a part of several losing seasons too. So if you're going to clean out that losing mentality, so to speak, not that he's he's a losing mentality type of player. I'm just saying, like, people get stuck in a rut, and if you want to make some change, bringing him back didn't make a ton of sense to me. So I hear what you're saying. I just don't want him to push off a young up and coming player who can hopefully help the team for a lot longer. And then they go off and become like Isaiah McKenzie with the Bills, or somebody else who left the Broncos and became a pretty solid player, Connor McGovern,
Or how about like this guy that Lawrence Rivera's shouting out here? He's saying,
exactly.
I say we need to bring Shaq Barrett back if we want a real shot. He's still in his prime. He could basically be that Aqib Talib personality we need to own Mahomes, like he continually had in years past. It could be that factor, especially with Mahomes' leg health problems. And I don't know that a reunion with Shaq Barrett's in the fold. I think he's probably going to want too much money. I'm not even sure if he's a free agent, to tell you the truth. I don't know. I haven't followed Shaq Barrett after he had that 17 sack season. And everyone's like, oh man, holy cow, the Broncos missed out on this guy. They were never going to be able to afford him. They still had Von Miller. They were really interested in what Shane Ray was going to be doing. Like that whole situation was something that Shaq Barrett wanted to move on to bigger and better things. The Broncos let him do it, and he just blew up. If the Broncos do want to bring him back, it's going to have to be on a deal that's I'm not going to say veteran minimum, but you need to be below what, $8.9 million. I think the Broncos have in salary cap space right now. So you got to be very creative with your financial aspect of bringing Shaq Barrett back. I like the idea for sure. I believe he had some experience with Vance Joseph as well. So there's a personal connection there with Shaq Barrett and the Broncos again. But I don't know. What do you think, Tom? Shaq Barrett, is he a potential option here?
I would love it to have him back, right? But you're like you said, financially speaking, probably not going to happen. But there is big question marks in the edge rusher group for the Broncos. There just is. There's no question about it. Randy Gregory has not stayed healthy, and he hasn't been on the field a ton over his career, suspensions and whatnot. You know, you've got Baron Browning who was injured. They have star caliber players there, but there's question marks. And if you could somehow figure out the financial, I would welcome him back in a heartbeat, because, you know, he's one of those star caliber pass rushers. And you know, if Randy Gregory goes down, this defense is going to suffer. And I mean, I did not like the signing to begin with. I thought it was a bad signing back when they made that deal, because he's just not on the field. And if he doesn't make it on the field again this year, it's going to be a huge, you know, black eye, in my opinion, for George Payton for signing Randy Gregory. But I would love to see him come back. It'll be a great reunion. I just don't know if they can make it work financially. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, and Scott comes in, and he says behind the scenes here, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and he's $21 million this season. It's not happening. You're not trading for a guy like that. Just not doing it. So, which is unfortunate. I mean, I like the concept. I like the idea behind it, but yeah, you're not going to get a guy like a Shaq Barrett to come. You're not trading for a player of that caliber with that kind of money especially with the cap space the Broncos have. Phil jumping back in third time, man. Holy cow, Phil. What's up, dude? He says, I think Jason Elam could still kick better than Elliott Fry.
Going old school.
Can we get Gary Anderson or Morton Anderson while we're at it? I mean,
maybe Rich Carlos, somebody. Get Rich Carlos. Bring back the barefoot kicker. Man, thank you for bringing up Jason Elam's name, Phil, man. One of the best kickers. I mean, the best kicker in Broncos history for sure, but one of the best kickers in NFL history, really. I mean, you could probably make an argument, and I have, for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you can bring him back, but yeah, it's just pointing out that, you know, it seems kind of absurd to think Jason Elam could come back and kick better, but that's the whole point we're trying to make is this is a head scratching move. If we're already like, hey, maybe Rich Carlos can come back or whatever, you know what I'm saying? It's a head scratcher, and I just don't see it. I just don't see why they did it the way they did it. But yeah, I mean, I'm always down for a little Jason Elam banter for sure. Bringing back old school.
I was going to say, I'm always welcoming the conversation of going back to 98, 99, John Elway and Rod Smith, Terrell Davis, Shannon, like all those guys. In fact, I actually just retweeted a video. The Denver Broncos social media account retweeted somebody asking who's the best number 80 that you can think of. And obviously the Broncos, they retweeted and they said Rod Smith, like the greatest undrafted wide receiver in NFL history, unless you want to talk Wes Welker. But regardless, that's my opinion. Rod Smith, greatest undrafted wide receiver in NFL history. It's a shame he's not in the Hall of Fame. He should be. Yeah. He just recently got into the Ring of Fame, but two Super Bowl championships, like I think 9 1,000-yard seasons, 12,000 total yards in his career, right at 1,000 catches in his career. Like, you're talking one of the great wide receivers of his generation, back from 96, I believe, was when he got his breakout year, and then all the way through 2007 or 95. Yeah. So
95, he caught that game-winning touchdown against the Washington Redskins, and then built from there. But yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir about Rod Smith. He's, and the number 80 really, I know we're going to go old school here for a minute, but the number 80 is a pretty special number for the Broncos. You got Rick Upchurch, you've got others, so, it's a very special number, but Rod Smith is at the top of that class for sure.
Yeah.
You know what I want to talk about though a little bit, because we brought it up and we kind of glossed over the whole tight end, bringing in that new tight end, and they cut 2 running backs. To me, all the signs are still pointing, and it boggles my mind that it's happening, that Javonte Williams is actually what they say he is, that he's healing up perfectly, and he's going to be ready for training camp to cut those, especially the big bruiser type, the one of the bigger guy that they cut that I thought had a potential shot of making the team, right? That tells me that Javonte Williams, this isn't just smoke that they're slinging, that looks like he's going to be ready.
Man, I don't know.
I know, same here.
So without being at OTAs and seeing what he was moving around, like there was multiple reports out there just saying that he was out there and he was out kind of running around, cutting a little bit and taking some reps out of the backfield, catching passes and doing it. I think he did a little bit of 7-on-7, but we're talking OTAs here, guys. It's like 60%. You're not running full speed by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not trying to be the wet blanket here, but like I've said multiple different times before, the guy tore 3 out of 4 knee ligaments in his left knee and his left knee, and he's out there doing a little bit of workout. I think that's more of a test and baseline of where he's at more than it's like a sign that he's going to be ready. Like I'm just being real here, you know. Yeah. The average time worth of rehab that you need to have to suffer that kind of injury is anywhere from 14 to 16 months. Like that's a year and 2 to 4 months, you know, and he suffered that knee injury in October, week 4. Like, I don't want to, you know, dampen everybody's hopes and stuff like that, but I don't think that seeing him out there was more of just let's see where you're at. Let's get you running just a little bit, kind of test that knee out, see what we're looking at. If he does come back, I'll put a big tweet, change my Twitter handle. I don't know. Like it's going to be obviously something silly like that, but like I don't expect him to be ready for the start of the season, much less the start of training camp. If he does, you're talking Adrian Peterson style of rehab, and if that happens, then Javonte Williams is rushing for 2,000 yards next season. Like so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that they haven't made any moves to make me think that they're desperate for someone to fill in. So I'm with you, man. I've been saying the same thing like from the very beginning. Do not expect him to be back soon. That's a major injury. But then I keep seeing all these non-moves, so to speak, or these moves that get rid of running backs. It's like, man, I keep going back and forth. Are they really telling it how it is? I don't know. We got Troy Boer coming in with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Really appreciate it. And his question is this: who is your surprise cut tomorrow by another team that the Broncos might be interested in? A kicker? Any potential centers? Those are good questions. The Broncos need a center. I mean, in my opinion, that's the weak link in their entire offensive line. What do you think? Is there going to be some surprise January 1st cuts coming down? Anything on your radar, Lance?
Well, the one that, and I talked about it last night. I hate to keep like making the same points over and over again, but we got a new audience tonight. I haven't got a chance to chop it up with you. So, the one that I know is coming down the pike is Dalvin Cook. From all reports, is going to be a June 1st release. So there's that running back you're potentially making room for. You know, I don't know what the deal would potentially look like. Hopefully, it's a 2-year deal and you get about $6 million. You know, and figure out a way to lower that cap hit, give him a smaller little signing bonus, or maybe you just drop his. Give him a signing bonus, drop his first year salary down to $750,000 and bring him in for 2 seasons, because then you have Javonte Williams and Dalvin Cook on the cheap going into 2024. In terms of centers, I actually wrote an article a while ago. It was 3 free agents that the Broncos could potentially bring in after. This was right after the draft. There's 3 free agents the Broncos could bring in. And the one that I really liked at the center position was Chase Roulier, formerly with the Washington Commanders. A former 6th-round pick, turned into a quality starter, was one of the best pass protecting centers in the game there for 2 seasons. But he's coming off of a lot of injuries. He's had a knee injury that sidelined him for the majority of this last season. He had a broken fibula in 2021 that sidelined him for 9 games. So he's only played, I believe, 11 total games over the last 2 seasons. So injury concerns aside, you're bringing in a guy that can play the pivot, that's shown to be able to play the center position at a high level, is quality in pass protection, shores up the interior of that offensive line, and would be an immediate upgrade over both Alex Forsyth and I guess Kyle Fuller and I guess Lloyd Cushenberry as well, because Cushenberry struggles so bad in pass protection, plugging up the A-gap. So that's a veteran signing. He's not a free agent right now, and I believe he's a street free agent as well, because the Commanders released him a few weeks ago. So he's not going to count against the compensatory formula. You bring him back, that would be a big move for me. Bring him in on a veteran minimum deal, let him go out there and compete. He'd probably win the job outright and be a major upgrade and complete the overhaul of this offensive line.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I really haven't other than everybody talking about Cook and a few other big names that really, I mean, the running back would help. Dalvin Cook would definitely help the Broncos, but I mean, I can't think of any centers that are, going to be that big surprise. And if they are they really that good? You know what I guess, there's none that are making so much money that like, oh, we got to get rid of them kind of thing. Like we see with the running backs here that, especially one that you mentioned, Dalvin Cook and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't see any, I think every rumor that's out there isn't going to be a surprise anymore, but there could be one. And if there is one, if a center does become available, the Broncos have to at least try to go after. They have to. I know that I think Sean Payton thinks that Cushenberry can turn it around. All signs have been pointing to that. I just don't trust that he can. So they need to go after it. We got David McElrath coming in with a super. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
He's telling me that there's no way JL Skinner is going to go anywhere, period. He says JL Skinner's not going anywhere, period. I tend to agree with you, David. I like Skinner. I think he fell in the draft. I've said that before. I really like his game. I think he's going to be a future star. But that's why I'm wondering why the heck bring back Kareem Jackson if he is going to be that future, right? Somebody that they've drafted recently is going to get cut. And for a 1 year at best safety, who's probably not going to be on a team next year. That's just, he's probably, if he is, it's going to be another minimum deal, but probably not with the Broncos. Why risk, because if you bring him back, your plans are to keep him, right? You don't bring back a vet like that and say, oh, we'll have you around for training camp and then we're going to send you packing. And they might, I don't know, but that's usually not the plan. So it makes me wonder who's that cut. It's Delaren Turner-Yell and possibly somebody else. Depending on how many safeties they keep. If they want to go with heavier in the cornerback room, they're going to have to go with 4 safeties. And you've got Kareem Jackson and Simmons, and you got Stearns probably, and then whoever that 4th guy is going to knock at least 2 young, pretty solid safeties with some potential off the roster.
Well, I think you're with Delaren Turner-Yell, that's the one that I really think is the guy that's going to move off. Obviously, Sean Payton coming in and resetting everything. Sure. He barely made the roster at the tail end of last season, played a little bit towards the tail end of last season, and he's got practice squad eligibility. Like if you like him to keep him around, you drop him down, keep him on the practice squad, let him just continue to develop. And it all goes back again to what does JL Skinner look like in camp? Is he actually even going to be ready to go? Because if he's not ready coming off that torn pec, you put him on the PUP list and you have until week 6 to make a decision with him. And if you don't bring him back off a PUP, you put him on IR, you let him sit for the rest of the year, and you still have a veteran guy like Kareem Jackson. So there's a couple of different angles to kind of attack that signing and figure out why you would do that, and also why you would bring in a guy like JL Skinner to just bring up some competition and everything like that. There's a lot of different ways that this is all. The more that you dive into it, the more that it actually does make sense. And I didn't really even think about that, the whole PUP aspect of it, until literally just now. So if he's not ready to go, you put him on PUP, you put him on IR, you stash him for a year, let him come back. He has the ability to play that Kareem Jackson role, dude. He's like, I don't want to say he compares perfectly to Kareem Jackson, but he's a violent hitter. He loves to play down in the box, has decent ball skills, good enough range. He can play in a double high system. You don't want to leave him single high because he doesn't have that range to play there, but he can still fill in that Kareem Jackson role. If it's not this year, you've got a perfect guy to mentor him all through the offseason. He can still be around him in the building and stuff like that. Work through him with the season. Next year, you bring him back. There's your guy. Caden Stearns, I love Caden Stearns. I think that he can be a very good player. I think that he's more like a Justin Simmons, has some more range, some more athleticism, better ball skills. But if you can run with those 3 guys as your safeties, you've got Justin Simmons, who's a franchise cornerstone, and 2 very good players that can play a rotational role as that nickel safety and nickel dimebacker kind of guy that plays closer to the line of scrimmage and run defense. So, like I said, the more you break it down, the more it makes a little bit of sense. While it may not make sense right now in the tail end of May, what about May in 2024?
Yeah. Good points. I mean, that's a good point. If he's not healed, you can stash him. I just would be surprised that he isn't healed and ready to go though. So if he isn't, absolutely, then you've got somebody ready to go. The guy that am going to compare that to is Christopher Allen, edge rusher, who's going to probably surprise some people this year, in my opinion. I saw him out there in training camp. I think he might come on. So you may be right. You may hit the nail on the head there with that one, Lance. So appreciate it. Now I got a good question here from Phil McLaughlin with more Facebook stars. Thank you for the support, man, as always. Talking about Palczewski. What do you guys think about Palczewski? Already started 65 games, a record for the Big Ten, playing tackle and guard. I came out and said that he's going to be my surprise that makes the team. I like his game. I like his versatility. He's an undrafted free agent type guy, but he's got good experience. And at the time I said that, the Broncos had they hadn't signed Cameron Fleming, right? They had Isaiah Prince as the backup swing tackle, and they really didn't have a great depth at guard. So, but I'm still thinking that I like Palczewski. I think he's got some potential. Maybe he doesn't make the team this year. They stashed him on the practice squad because they have Cameron Fleming back in the fold. But yeah, I'm all for it. I like him a lot.
So I haven't got a chance to watch Palczewski yet. Alex Palczewski, the offensive tackle from Illinois, just for everybody that doesn't know who we're talking about here. I haven't got a chance to watch him yet, but he is one of the guys that I have starred for my film breakdowns that I'm going to do over the course of the summer. Getting started with Drew Sanders is the first one I'm going to do. But I'm going to do all of the draft picks and then a handful of the undrafted players. So as soon as I watch him and get a good idea about his play style, what he brings to the fold, you'll know it because you're going to get 5 gifts from me like you do on every single one of these articles I do every single year. So I'm not going to speak to him right now, but what I have heard of him is he can play both sides of the offensive line. Obviously started 65 games for Illinois in the Big Ten, obviously a Big Ten record there, as Phil just brought up. But other than that, I haven't seen him, so I'm not going to speak to him and give a false narrative if that makes sense to everybody. So I do apologize for that.
Yeah, and I think the hardest part now is for him to make the team is the re-signing of Cameron Fleming, right? Fleming's coming in. He can play that swing tackle. Probably not going to take a chance on a young guy. So when I said he was going to surprise everybody, that was before. But I'm still going to stick with it and say, you know what? He's going to be in the future of the Broncos. I think he's got what it takes. Being versatile on the offensive line, it keeps people around the NFL. Being able to play multiple positions on the offensive line, that keeps you in with a job. Maybe not a starter, but having that versatility to swing across the line and play different positions, that keeps you employed in the NFL. So I got my fingers crossed for him. I hope he does make it. But yeah, signing Fleming has made that significantly harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cam Fleming, I've said this multiple different times. I've tweeted it out a handful of different times as well. He was the best right tackle the Broncos have had in any singular season, going back to Orlando Franklin. Like, quite honestly, 2014, I believe, was his last year in Denver. So it's been damn near a decade that the Broncos have been trying to find out a solution at the right tackle position. I know for a fact they got the guy in Mike McGlinchey. I think that he's going to be a superstar for this Broncos team at the right tackle position, especially comparing them to everybody else that the Broncos have seen for 10 years. But Fleming last year, he played really well on the right side, won that job fairly easily from the sound of it. And then when Garrett Bowles went down, he switched over to the left side, played pretty well over on the left side as well. So you've got a quality swing tackle that has a lot of NFL experience. You bring him back on a cheap deal. It's like 1 year, $3.1 million. So he's not a guy that you're going to be forcing into the rotation more often than not. So Fleming, that was like the most underrated signing that the Broncos made, and nobody talks about it the way that they should, because like I said, he's just a quality player that you can trust out there on the field and just be a solidifying force if somebody goes down. And I think he could play some guard too. I quite honestly, I think he'd be better at guard.
Like I said, versatility keeps you employed in the NFL, and here he is back with the Broncos. And you're right, he actually played pretty solid. And if you remember, people were kind of scratching their head about that, having Fleming on the team. Like, he's not very good. He actually played pretty darn good. So yep. I appreciate the signing. I appreciate it. It just makes me feel bad for the young guys who are trying to make the team, probably aren't going to make it. But there's another question out here asking about who we think the undrafted free agents are. That there's one that makes one almost every year for the Broncos. It's been, I think, 1 year out of, 20 that they haven't had one. Who's going to make it? And he's suggesting the running back, Jaleel McLaughlin. And that's a good one. I think that the Broncos need that change of pace type back. And so far from the reports, he's really impressed. I think it's a good one to bet on.
Yeah. Michael Ronquillo jumping in with his answer here on Facebook, throwing some stars down. So thanks, Michael, for that. Saying cornerback Art Green is one cornerback to watch out for making the Broncos roster. I don't disagree with you. A lower level roster guy, quality special teams player, sticky in coverage too. Very sticky in coverage. A little handsy, but he's a quality player. I liked him. I didn't get a chance to really break him down. I did see a little bit of his tape. Again, this is one of the other guys that I have starred to do a film breakdown on because I think he has a quality chance to make the roster based on what I did get to see. But the guy that I'm very intrigued by is Thomas Incoom, the edge rusher from Central Michigan. He's thick. He's got decent length, plays to it pretty well. Quality run defender, very raw as a pass rusher. So you're looking for him to develop in that certain aspect. But given the landscape of this Broncos edge room, you've got Nick Bonito, who was an abject disaster against the run last season. Jonathan Cooper, not very good against the run, but at least somewhat solid. And then Baron Browning, who's still very raw, still needs to learn the better nuances of playing full-time as an edge defender. And then with Randy Gregory, you just don't know. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be suspended? He's never played more than 12 games in a season, and that's just a huge question mark. Thomas Incoom, he may not be the flashiest guy, but he can go out there, sink his anchor in the dirt, and just be a brick wall in the running game. And I like him to be that guy that undrafted free agent that's going to make this roster. And Rebels Legacy jumping in real fast. I want to piggyback off of that with Christopher Allen is going to shock some people this year. I think that's a very astute point as well. Incoom and Christopher Allen they're going to battle for that fifth edge spot. And one of the two is going to come away with it. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody move him on from Jonathan Cooper because Christopher Allen and Incoom just offer a little bit more versatility in what they're able to do.
Yeah, I mean Cooper's a good story, really. I mean,
yeah.
Who's not going to root for him after everything he's been through? But yeah, they need to upgrade. They need to upgrade that room, and they need to prepare for the future. Because if Randy Gregory doesn't play again well or much this season, they're gonna move on from him. Yep. Right? He's not reliable. He's not going to earn his contract, and they can get out of that contract next year relatively unscathed. So they need to prepare for the future. And you're right. Those two have some potential. We've seen what Jonathan Cooper can do. I like him, love his story, but he doesn't have that upside where you could say he's going to step in for a Randy Gregory and be that impact player that they need when Randy Gregory's not available. But there is potential for Christopher Allen and Incoom to do that. They still have to prove that they can. Obviously, we got to see them, on the field in the NFL to say that for sure, but they have that potential to do that. I think that's a good one for sure. I'm a little hesitant to think a cornerback's going to make it just because they've got a pretty full cornerback room with some experience mixed in with youth. It's going to be hard to crack into that lineup, from my opinion. But maybe that's another guy they get on the practice squad and prepare him for the future as well. So there's the nice thing is there's a lot of good young options. I think there's some great, actually pretty solid young options on this Broncos team. I think there's a few spots where they're lacking experienced depth. They went out and signed defensive line being one of them. They did go out and sign someone with a little bit of experience. I wish they had a little bit more experience coming in, but there's a few areas where they have some young guys, but not enough experience depth, in my opinion. And that's where they need to maybe clear up some of that cap space to go get somebody like that. I was hoping they would go get somebody like Akeem Hicks or something to fill out that, experienced defensive line rotation. But they haven't done it yet, but they still might. I mean, there's still people out there that they can go get, but I think they need a couple more experienced players. They did it with Cameron Fleming, which I was pretty happy about, but the defensive line definitely needs to have a little bit more experience in that rotation. So we'll see what happens. I think they are clearing space for it. I mean, why cut Brad McManus? If you're not clearing space for somebody, I'm not sold that Dalvin Cook's coming, but people think that he is, but maybe it's for somebody else.
Yeah. Keith Brugman, buddy of mine, joined his show, the Denver Broncos Roundup, several times now.
Nice.
And thanks for joining us, Keith. It's always good to see you in the chat. Talking about Shaq Barrett again, saying that he's likely going to be cut as a post June 1st designation. If so, do we bring him back? Keith, we talked about this just a little bit ago, but I'll address your question just because I wanted to say, hey, probably not. I don't think the Broncos are going to be able to afford him. I think he's going to want too much money, even with being that post June 1st cut. He's supposed to get $21 million this season. He's not going to take, $6 million from the Broncos to come back. At least I don't think that's going to be a potential possibility. So I just wanted to address that and say hi to my buddy Keith. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Keith, man. I appreciate you being here as always. You're here often, and we really like it. And good luck with your podcast. So I'll have to check it out. Appreciate that. Yeah, man, Lance, we've been chopping it up here for a while, and I appreciate you jumping on here. I think we should start winding down the show a little bit, unless some big comment comes in here at the end that we really need to get to. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun, man. I've had a lot of fun talking with you. First time to do it, but it's been great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem, man. I do got one thing that I want to run by you, though, because here earlier this afternoon, Chad Jensen, the boss man, released a story talking about a former NFL GM saying that Russell Wilson is fighting for his job. This was Mike Tannenbaum, former New York Jets GM, he's now working with ESPN kind of as a contributor and an analyst. He said on ESPN's Get Up segment, I believe yesterday, that, quote, Russell Wilson isn't fighting for his legacy. He's fighting for his job. Then he went on to say that he was trying to get into Sean Payton's head and portray how the Broncos' new head coach was likely going to view Russell Wilson's situation. He said, quote, he couldn't care about a salary cap charge, dead money, or anything like that. The best players will play. They will draft Wilson's replacement if he doesn't do everything he says from day one. If you go back to his press conference, Sean Payton talked about, quote, there will be no outside coaches or mentors in the building. He is the new sheriff in town, and he's beholden to no one, including Russell Wilson's guaranteed money. Like, these are some pretty strong comments coming from a guy that has experience also under Bill Parcells, different teams, different time frames, but they both have worked with Bill Parcells. They both have that Bill Parcells mentality, man. Did you see those comments? And if you have not, what do you think about hearing them on the first time?
Yeah, I haven't seen them. I mean, my first initial thought is, you're working for ESPN. You need to get some buzz going, right? Let's do something shocking. Tell people that Russell Wilson's playing for his job, get some attention. I think he probably is to a certain extent. If he goes out and bombs like he did last year, heck yes. But let's face it, they brought him in to be the elite quarterback that he's supposed to be. They're hoping Sean Payton can institute an offense that brings that out of him. And if he's even pretty good, right? If he's pretty good, he's going to be sticking around. So playing for his job, maybe not. Maybe his future job in 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. But yeah, I don't know. That seems a little drastic to me. But like you said, it's no nonsense, right? If you're not buying into this program, if you're not willing to put in the work, and if you're not willing to go out there and perform, then you're going to be out of a job, even Russell Wilson. But from my perspective, Russell Wilson is putting in the work. He's doing everything it takes to get back to that quarterback he was. And I don't know. It seems a little drastic to me to think that it's he's going to get the axe this year and then gone. I don't know. It seems a little drastic.
I agree with you on that one, and I've said it again. I've said it a lot of times. I think Sean Payton's the right guy for this job. I think that getting Russell Wilson. I talked about this specifically last night on Building the Broncos. I'll say it here to you. I think Russell Wilson's humbled. I think that he's embarrassed. I think that he understands and he knows what happened last season is completely unacceptable by anybody in NFL standards. He had too much control. There was way too much of him jet setting the world. And I mean, sure, you can still be putting in work. I mean, the guy did high knees on the plane to London to kind of work through a hamstring injury, whatever. It's all, I don't care. I think that as of right now, Russell Wilson is embarrassed, and he knows that last year wasn't good enough, and he knows that he's got to defend his legacy, and he knows he's fighting for his job. Because I do believe if he puts out another performance like he did last season, he will be cut, and the Broncos will move on, and they will draft his replacement. I agree with Mike Tannenbaum here. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Russell Wilson is going to have a massive rebound season this year. And he might touch 4,000 yards. He's probably going to throw for 25 to 30 touchdowns and keep those interceptions below 10. I think he's going to have that top 10 to 12-ish quarterback season. And with the running game the Broncos want to use, they're going to be out there just letting him go make the plays that he needs to make, let him manage the game, take the shots that you need to have, take the ball out of his hands and not let him throw it 50 times a game, and get him back to that 2019 Russell Wilson form where he was a MVP candidate. And he actually should have been in the vote. I mean, Lamar Jackson won it unanimously, but he should have at least got voted for an MVP. He's never even got one before. I'm not going to say
I'm with you, man. I've been talking about this for a long time. He was on a Hall of Fame trajectory for sure. Probably still is. You know, people like that, if it's not a major injury where you're almost like Dan Marino, where he had to wear a special boot in order to be able to get back out on the field after his Achilles tear. They bounce back and have at least one or two good seasons after the fact. It's not major injuries. He's not old by any means at this point. There's no reason why he can't bounce back. I think it was a Nathaniel Hackett and him coming together, putting together something that was ill-fitted for both of them, and it didn't work out. He had a bad season. It happens. You look at any NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, they've had a bad season. It happens. He's going to bounce back. I don't think he may be a little bit worried about his legacy. I don't think he's worried about his job, but he is putting the time in because, like you said, he's got pride. He's got he wants to show people that last year was a fluke, and he's going to do it. I think he's going to, like you said, he's going to have a really good season, bounce back, and people are going to forget that we were wishing he was cut from the team.
This right here. Yeah. Brendan P. jumping in here at the last minute saying, comeback player of the year. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the type of season you're going to see from Russell Wilson this year. And just to piggyback off of a point that you had, look at all the players that are coming to his defense. I mean, Jerry Jeudy just did a 45-minute podcast with Brandon Marshall the other day talking about how Russell Wilson puts in work. He's the first guy in the building, the last guy out of it. He's there, at 5 o'clock in the morning, doesn't leave until 9 o'clock at night. He does put in this work. I believe Calvin Anderson was talking about it. There's multiple different players that have come out and said it wasn't necessarily a Russell Wilson problem. We just had no identity. We didn't know. And that's words out of Nathaniel Hackett's mouth himself that later down, like, we don't have an identity. We can't figure out what we're trying to do here. And that's a big reason why when you bring in a guy like Sean Payton, he's going to set this culture up. He's going to make it be the way that it needs to be. And he's going to turn Russell Wilson around 100%. And comeback player of the year, yes. If I had extra money to put on a sports book to bet Russell Wilson is comeback player of the year right now, I bet the odds are around plus 600 or something like that. Yeah. I would put $100 on it right now, and I'd walk out of the bank. Even if he doesn't win, I'd still walk out of the bank very comfortable with losing that $100 for sure. But I'm probably going to win it. That's my estimation anyways.
My only problem with it is if DeMar Hamlin plays one snap, he's going to win it. That's the only problem I have.
That's true.
If he plays one snap next year after everything that happened in, with Monday Night Football and him, on that field, if he's able to play one snap, he's going to get it. And no matter how good Russell Wilson is, that's the only caveat I'm going to throw out there is because, of that massive media. Everybody saw it. Everybody was rooting for him. So if he plays again, he's going to probably get it. But you're right. He should definitely do it. So Michael Ronquillo is going to send us out saying, great show tonight, Thomas Hall and Lance and Mile High Insiders. Go Broncos and buck 'em. So as we're going out, just say happy birthday to Luke Patterson. It's not here. And thank you for Luke. Lance for stepping in. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, man, it was always a lot of fun. Let me sign myself off really fast. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a pleasure to join you, Tom, and to actually chop it up for a minute and actually have some fun. It was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can do it again. Follow me, guys, on Twitter at LanceS_MHH, and you all stay safe and take care. Have a great weekend, and as always, go Broncos.
Yeah, thank you. Go Broncos.